Greetings everyone, hey, how you doing? It's Sella here. Today we are doing a spoiler review for the latest MCU big ending finale, Avengers Endgame. That's right, this is a spoiler review, kind of a discussion, giving my opinions on the big anticipated movie of the decade practically, Avengers. It all came down to this. After Infinity War with everything that's happened, Endgame is where it all comes to pass. And so I preface this again, this is a spoiler review, so I'm going to be talking as much of the plot that really stood out to me, so you have been warned, this is a spoiler review. If you haven't seen it, I recommend you save this video for later, otherwise proceed, you have been warned, spoilers ahead. So to kind of give context for this entire experience for me, ever since Infinity War came out, I've been really excited about what's going to happen next. Not like super into it. For a while, the MCU films have been kind of like, dare I say formulaic, but they were still entertaining nonetheless to me. So when Infinity War was preempted to come out, I knew a lot about what was going on behind the scenes, like what kind of source material they were referencing and things like that. Obviously not behind the scenes knowing exactly how they were going to write it, but I follow a lot of movie news. So I kind of know, like, whenever Feige says something or the Russo brothers say something, they kind of say, like, well, we were kind of drawing from here, this is where we would like to go. It was back when Infinity War was originally going to be called Infinity War Part 1 and Part 2. Then they decided to drop that and just call Infinity War and not say what the last part's going to be called, which, obviously, we now know, Endgame. So what I'm trying to get at is, when it came to Infinity War, I kind of knew where Feige wanted to take this story. And obviously, at the end of Infinity War, Thanos got all the stones, did the snap, half of all life in the universe ceased to exist, and everyone was left to the fallout of it. So when that part happened, I mean, aside from like when Spider-Man was turning to dust, the emotional impact wasn't really there for me, but that's kind of because I knew this was technically Part 1 and Part 2 is going to either resolve all this or what have you. And the other thing that kind of took away the emotion from Infinity War, I know I'm talking a lot about that, I'm just trying to give context here, is at the time, Spider-Man Homecoming 2, Far From Home, we didn't know the title yet, but there was another Spider-Man movie on the works. Doctor Strange 2 was announced, as well as a couple other sequels, and some of the, Black Panther, can't forget that one. And so by hearing all those announcements, you kind of know that they're gonna come back. Otherwise, they could be a prequel movie, but that might be awkward. That kind of killed the emotional ties for me, and I think some of those sequels were technically already announced before Infinity War came out. Otherwise than that, I knew this was Part 1 Infinity War. So with Endgame, I honestly had no idea what was going to happen to the main cast itself. Yes, I knew that they would probably come back, the half-death snap thing, but aside from that, I had no other context. I didn't know what source material they were going to really pull from, whether Thanos will continue being the main antagonist, or is the fallout itself going to be the struggle. I didn't know. And so after seeing the first trailer, I was like, I'm on board. I don't know what's going to happen, and I love it, and I want to keep it that way as fresh as possible. So after that, I avoided all trailers, I avoided all cast interviews, everything I could, to not get any additional context or peeks at what Endgame could be. That was my approach, and I'm really happy I did that, because this movie was a lot of fun to watch. It was really great. Definitely one of the most fun MCU films to date. Now, is it a perfect film? No, I'm not gonna say it was a perfect film, but I think that's okay. I think that's fine, because one of the biggest problems people had with Infinity War is that there were so many characters in there that if you are new to the MCU and you watch that for the first time without seeing the 20 other films, you will definitely be lost and you will not be engaged. That's fine. It's like a long-running TV series. That's just the finale of everything that is tied to that universe. And what was great about Endgame is that it too works the same way as Infinity War, where maybe not quite as a standalone it could ever work, but it's a great movie to tie in everything on any specific character you may really like who had an MCU film before. This is the film to give you that closure for the most part. And I think that's what really worked for me about the movie, is that we did kind of focus on the original Avenger characters. Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Hawkeye returned, Black Widow, the Hulk. They all returned, and they all kind of had their own little story going on here. Some of them have come to terms with what has happened and how they could better channel themselves. Other people let themselves go, which my theater had an uproar when it came to Thor. Hey, that rhymed. And every time he was on, people just loved the fact that he was just a drunk bastard. Oh man. Yeah, he was quite funny of like how nonchalant he was, and I suppose that is my only real first big complaint, is that the fat suit that he gave him was like, Chris Hemsworth is obviously not going to put on all that weight all that fast. So they put him in a bodysuit, I think, and I'll be honest with you, being fat myself, that wasn't really convincing fat. It was very stiff. I don't know. But whatever. He was covered up most of the time, so that was not really a big deal. I didn't expect the movie to do like a 5-year fallout thing where it's just like, oh, I thought the movie was technically going to take place like maybe a month after the events, but 5 years is quite a while, so I was impressed that they took that to kind of see how the world, as well as the universe, well, mostly Earth, was going through this fallout. So yeah, the fact that they were able to like come up with a plan, and I found it very interesting. I was kind of happy that I was partially right about Ant-Man being safe, quote unquote, in the quantum realm, but they didn't really clarify whether if he was supposed to be dusted away or not during the snap. But I was glad that he actually did play a major role in trying to get back everything that was lost and use the quantum realm as a way to like time travel, which is pretty cool. It was funny to have the film kind of jab at other films that did time jumps. So yeah, time is a really weird thing that doesn't quite work the way we would like it to work because debates. So yeah, like I said, with the original Avenger characters, it was really cool to have their closure. I was really happy that Captain America, Steve Rogers, he was able to get his closure. Originally, I didn't put much thought into it at the time, but at the beginning, when he was talking to Black Widow about having to accept things that happened and everything stays in the past, all that, but as he was traveling, he was seeing Agent Carter and all that, realizes that he's always been a fish out of water in the modern times, and the fact that he still wants to fulfill the promise to her to have one more last dance, or have a dance. And I thought it was really sweet how they wrapped that up, because I remember at the very end when they did the whole portal thing, I did think he wasn't going to come back, and when he didn't, and the guys looked over and they're like, hey, look, over there, it would either be Steve Rogers' son or it would be him as an old man. And well, turns out it was him as an old man handing the shield off to the Falcon, which is a really cool nod to the comics, because I remember hearing about that. The Falcon ended up taking up the mantle of the Captain America. Oh, and speaking of which, that Hail Hydra moment, that was great. The entire theater just applauded like crazy when that happened. It was fantastic. Iron Man was a really interesting one for me. Obviously, his whole story was about dealing like what's worth the sacrifice or not. He really wanted to hold on to his family that he built with Pepper Potts. But at the same time, the death of Peter Parker is still lingering over him. And he wants that closure there. He wants to save that kid. And he tried to come up with a balance to do it. And obviously with what happened at the end, he had to take the sacrifice to do the ultimate snap, to snap away all of Thanos' clones and all that. Being a human, couldn't handle that much power and radiation, gamma, as Bruce Banner said. It took his life, and it was a noble sacrifice. And I mean, I'll admit, I didn't really get that emotion right away. But I was like, yeah, I kind of knew a couple Avengers might die. And I figure either Steve Rogers would die or Tony Stark would die. Turns out it was Tony Stark, and I was kind of okay with that, because for a while in the MCU films, he kind of came across as I know he's supposed to be a rich jerk, kind of narcissistic, whatever, but a lot of the problems that happen in the MCU films, to me, was because he was being an idiot. So I kind of grew detached from him for a while, but the fact that he had the closure in this film made me realize, like, yeah, no, he made a lot of mistakes, but he did everything he could to make everything better, and I appreciate him. And during the funeral scene, I will admit I teared up a little bit. I mean, it is kind of a sentimental fact that technically it all started in 2008 with Iron Man. He was one of the first introductions to what we now have as the MCU. So there's that sentiment right there, and I think they did a fantastic job doing that. And speaking of deaths, I wish I felt more for Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow dying to get the Soul Stone. The whole proxy of how to get it to me was a little too ambiguous for me. Because I guess, like, in order to gain the Soul Stone, you have to give up something you most love or treasure. And Hawkeye and Black Widow were kind of fighting over each other. I was like, well, I guess I'll take the sacrifice. And oh no, I'll take it. And then it was an interesting scuffle, but I don't know, the whole like premise behind that, getting the Soul Stone, to me is a little too spiritual for my taste. And I'm not really a spiritual guy to begin with. Whatever. it didn't bother me that much. And Scarlett Johansson, if you know the Black Widow's history, she's gone through a lot of shit. And the fact that she was able to do this to help the Avengers save trillions of lives in order to gain the Soul Stone by sacrificing herself, it made sense to me. And while it's all sad in sentiments, I didn't really shed a tear for that. I felt for Hawkeye because very first scene we got from the Avengers Endgame movie was his family disappearing on him, and you could see how he's gone mad there. Hulk's thing was interesting. Like I said, I thought it was really cool that he kind of fused with the Hulk and Banner already, so he's like in full Hulk mode for the most of the time. And when he met the Ancient One, which it was really cool to see Tilda Swinton revise her role as that, I liked the little dialogue exchange about how to fix the timelines and all that just to gain the time zone. I just really enjoyed that scene and the fact that she kind of like knocked him out of his Hulk mode just so he was in his human mode too. I just enjoyed that little tiny arc they had. Rocket Raccoon, he's definitely not as like snarky as he was in like the Guardians of the Galaxy films, but it makes sense to me because, I mean, he lost most of his family, if not all. Really, all he had was Nebula, and they were just kind of like new at it at the time. So yeah, no, he lost a good chunk, and Groot was like probably his very first friend. So it was kind of cool to see him kind of like babysit Thor a little bit, try to like keep things steady. The Nebula thing kind of confused me a little bit, but I was able to keep track because like the 2 and 2. Don't have to worry about the paradox thing and all that, but I guess it made sense that the future Nebula and the past Nebula had that intertwining memory thing, but it got a little shoddy for me. Just a little bit, but didn't really take me out of the film that much. And I will say, like, in regards to the film, I am curious about what's the deal with Loki now, because when they tried to retrieve the Tesseract after the first Avengers movie, when they jumped back in time, Loki got his hands on the Tesseract, grabbed it, and just disappeared, and we never really acknowledged that again. And I was kind of hoping that there would be a post-credit scene or a mid-credit scene, but obviously I checked and confirmed there was none, except maybe a sound at the very end. I'll get to that later. I'm going to assume that that Tesseract nab in this quote-unquote alternate timeline is what will lead into the Disney Plus services of the Loki TV show. And correct me in the comment section if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming as of right now, that is that connection of why we're getting a Loki TV show. Is because of that timeline split from Endgame is the reason why. Because the movie does not address that ever again. And the movie is long and there's a lot in there, so maybe I missed it. But as far as I can tell, it's up in the air. Everything else positive that I could really think of is like, I was just glad we were able to focus on the original Avengers again. It was a lot of fun to kind of see them time jump and go into past era, things like that. To me, those things have always been kind of cool. It's like a really cool trip down memory lane and all that. Kind of going to my negatives and sort of reactions, so I apologize if this might trigger anyone, but there was one thing that happened, and this was mostly a movie theater thing for me. Whatever your opinions are on Captain Marvel or not, but I really felt like this movie was trying to push on how great she is, and she is powerful. She took down an entire fleet, and Captain Marvel, if you didn't know that, sorry, spoilers, but this is Endgame. You should probably already know that by now. And the way the movie has set up its cinematography shots like that, quick subcontext here. Whenever characters returned, i.e. the Black Panther, T'Challa, and the others, when the Wakandan warriors appeared, everyone in the theater cheered. Everyone loved it. When Doctor Strange reappeared, everyone loved it. When Tom Holland's Spider-Man came out, everyone was like, woo, yes! We all felt that energy. We were like, hell yeah, these characters are showed. Even characters who were not dusted when they came back, people were like, oh yeah, cool, that guy, woo! But when Captain Marvel appeared, the theater, I'll be honest with you, the theater was a little quiet. Maybe there was like one person going like, yeah. But for the most part, everyone was like, eh. And I don't know if that has to do with the controversy or not, Brie Larson's comments long ago. I'm not going to get into that now because I'm not an outrage guy. I don't like to incite that kind of mindset. But if you've seen my previous review for Captain Marvel, I thought that movie was okay. It had a lot of strengths to it. It was kind of fun to watch. But I am going to admit, Captain Marvel herself is not really an interesting character right now. Like her personality, she didn't really have that unique quirk or flaw to her that made me really engage with her. Like in contrast with like Tony Stark or Black Widow or Captain America. They have their quirky personalities, but they also have that gauging flaw that makes them unique. And aside from being like super powerful, Brie Larson's Captain Marvel, she didn't really have that gravitas. What's interesting, I learned, and confirm this in the comment section if you like, because I believe this is true, Brie Larson shot all her scenes being Captain Marvel first time in the Avengers Endgame movie before her actual movie. So if that is the case, I can definitely see that, because she really had no personality really in this movie at all. Maybe that one time when she was kind of like, quote unquote, sizing up to Thor, she kind of had that arrogance a little bit, like she had her confidence. But apart from that, she was just more as a ace in the whole tool thing, where she just came in and leveled whatever needed to be leveled. And I think they were really, really trying to push that in this movie. And again, I'll be honest with you, the theater was just not really having it. They weren't offended. I don't think they were offended by it, but they weren't enthralled with it. And that's just my theater experience. It's obviously going to be different throughout the world, but if you guys had a similar experience in the theater when that happened or whenever she appeared, maybe they need to work on making her more unique. I don't know. I really don't know, but everyone was like, oh yeah, Captain Marvel, okay, yeah, okay. Where's Chitala? Chitala? Where's that really cool suit of yours in the slicing? Tom Holland? Oh, there you are. Woo! But I really don't know. I think she was just kind of pushed on a marketing scale to be like a very big player, but honestly, I thought Scott Lang played a way bigger role in terms of the story than Brie Larson's Captain Marvel. But that's just how I see it. Moving on. Trying to think if there's anything else that kind of didn't work for me, and I suppose that's Thanos himself. But it's partially to be expected because he was such a great villain in Infinity War. We knew his motivation, we knew his struggle, and when he finally achieved it, he had his peace. In this movie, it's a somewhat continuation of his story, though when he was found and decapitated within the first act of the story, I thought, okay, so we're not really going to focus on Thanos as the overall antagonist this time around. We're just going to focus on the struggles of trying to actually fix what he has done. But no, when we went back in time to get the Power Stone and the Soul Stone, this drew attention to Thanos in the past. He got the notion that he would succeed, and people have gone into the past to undo it, so therefore he's like, it's my destiny to do this. He decided to steal a bit of the Pym particles from Nebula, the future one, and just go to the present Avenger location and wreak havoc there and just regather the stone so he can make sure he can wipe out everything. And I suppose that's a little bit of the pros for me too, is that his motivation did technically evolve from just wiping out half the universe to you know what, screw it, I'm gonna wipe out everything, and with the blood of the fallen, I will rebuild a world into something new that never knew the sacrifice that had to be made. So no one like Tony Stark or Steve Rogers could ever get in his way again. And logically, yeah, that makes sense, motivation-wise, but at that point, he just kind of became a force of nature that just had to be resolved. And that's fine. That's fine. That's what I'm ultimately trying to get at, is we got all that build-up from Infinity War, and so this movie is all about the payoff. It bugged me a little bit, but not that much, to be honest. I guess personally I don't have that many cons. It's just, well, okay, maybe some of the CGI didn't work in some spots. Mostly, I think the one time I really noticed how weak it looked was when we saw Thanos on his little farm, and he had that sleeveless shirt on or something. He had something on, and something about it just didn't look right. It looked kind of flat, muddy to me, but whatever. That was just a tiny nitpick. I really couldn't think of anything else beyond that. Honestly, I think everything else just kind of worked for what it had to do. It was a fun movie, although I guess I would say that when Hulk, after getting all those Infinity Stones, did the reverse snap to get those trillions of people back, I kind of wish we got some shots of the dusted people returning, regaining consciousness and saying oh shit, we gotta go off and help these guys. Although I guess that would conflict with that really cool moment where Steve Rogers was about to be defeated, and then suddenly all those portals show up and everyone returns. That was a really cool moment. I'm not gonna skirt around that. That was awesome. And I suppose, see, I'm arguing with myself already. I suppose Spider-Man kind of answered that for us, because he said what happened. He's like, I was unconscious for a short bit, but then when I came to, I saw Doctor Strange, and it says we have to prepare. And that's what happened. So I guess technically that answers that question. And what's funny is when Thanos was about to get the final blow before the actual final snap that Tony Stark took, for a while, I was actually half expecting Loki to come out of nowhere and cut off Thanos' arm or something that had the gauntlet at the time. Because again, I want to know, where the hell did he go? But I don't know. Overall, though, I think I've rambled on long enough. This movie was a lot of fun to watch. I greatly enjoyed it. And what's interesting is that while it was for 3 hours long, I did not have to take a pee break or anything like that. I was engaged the entire time, so good on you guys. I suppose, I'm going back to cons a little bit. I suppose the plot was a little bit predictable in some spots, in terms of, story beats, but whatever. That doesn't matter. It was still a lot of fun. And hopefully you guys had a lot of fun watching it, too. Now, I did not stay for the very, very end of the credits, because I checked online before I left the theater saying, oh, for the first time in history, there's no mid-credit or end credit. So what's the point of sticking around? Well, there is a little sound effect at the very, very end that die-hard fans of the MCU will catch. And that, in case for those who don't want to know what it is, you could probably stop the video here. Otherwise, I'm just going to say what it is. It's supposed to be metal clanking sounds first heard from the 2008 film Iron Man, when he was building his very first Iron Man suit. So it was a nice little callback to it. But I didn't want to stay for that because I was like, yeah, okay, cool. I'm good. And so that will do it with my spoiler review talk for Avengers Endgame. I want to thank you so much for sticking around to listen to my babbling butt. And for those who enjoy reviews just like this one, or like other things that I do, I strongly recommend please go to my Patreon at patreon.com/Matt Sella. Consider donating as low as $1 a month. And that will help me go a long way. That helps go towards this YouTube channel of podcast talks, reviews, games, things like that. But also goes towards my art and my animations. I have a lot of projects planned. I like to do a whole bunch of creative things, but I also like to share my opinions. That's the whole point of why I do these podcasts, is to give my opinions. But I also want to hear from you guys. Let me know in the comment section below, what were some of your favorite moments in Avengers Endgame? Did you like the movie? Did you not like the movie? Please let me know. Let's engage in conversation. All film is subjective, all entertainment is subjective, and I would love to hear your thoughts. And like I said, patreon.com/Matt Sella. You could check out some of my latest artwork there. I do comics, drawings, a whole bunch of little things, but I'm also working towards more animations. I actually recently finished a big animation, which, knowing the spike of subscribers that I gained, a good chunk of you probably have already seen it. And for those who enjoyed it, thank you so much. Worked really hard on that. Might end up doing a behind-the-scenes commentary for that video, because there were a lot of fun things that I put in there. See if anyone caught it, and quite a few people did. They caught a few things, but I think some people may have missed some Easter eggs. I'm not sure. But might work on something like that, and I'm definitely trying to plan what's the next animation I'm going to work on. So please consider supporting me at patreon.com/Matt Sella. Donate as low as $1, and I'd greatly appreciate it. Alright guys, thank you all for tuning in.